They fucked with the wrong species kids. Those alien bastards were going to pay, one way or another. In the peaceful human colony of New Eden, parents tucked their innocent children into bed, kissing them goodnight, completely unaware of the horror that was about to rain down upon them. Without warning, a fleet of ruthless Norcadian warships led by General Ceres, a hardened Xeno with a heart of stone, descended from the starry sky. The colony erupted into chaos as the warships blasted buildings to rubble, rounding up terrified, screaming children like cattle. Little Luke and Leia clung to each other as a towering Norcadian trooper ripped them from their parents' arms with claws like razors. Their dad Chris fought like hell to break free and save them, taking down a dozen Xenos with his bare fists. Yet even his ferocity wasn't enough. He watched helplessly as Luke and Leia, his babies, his whole world, were dragged into the belly of an alien ship. Just before the hatch slammed shut, Chris leapt, fueled by pure desperation, grabbing the edge of the ramp and hoisting himself inside. As the warship sped into hyperspace, Chris hid among stacked crates, listening intently as that piece of filth Ceres spoke to his emperor. Chris's blood turned to ice as their diabolical plans became clear. Experiment on the abducted human kids, use their adaptable DNA to craft the perfect super soldiers, and finally conquer the galaxy with an unstoppable army. Over Zolthar's dead body, the Norcadian Empire had no idea who they were fucking with. They thought humans were just some underdeveloped species to be exploited and controlled. Well, they were about to learn a painful lesson in human ingenuity, resilience, and the unstoppable force of a parent's love for their children. Chris gritted his teeth, a cold fury rising in his veins. Those Xeno scumbags wanted to harness human DNA? By God, he would give them a front-row seat to the raw power of the human spirit. Because when you came after humanity's kids, when you threatened humanity's future, you'd best be prepared for all-out war. The Norcadian Empire was going to regret the day they ever laid eyes on New Eden. Chris would make damn sure of that. Chris's stolen scout ship streaked through the void of space, the blue-green orb of New Eden growing larger in the view screen with each passing second. His heart pounded as he guided the alien craft into the colony's atmosphere, face hardened tight with almost unchecked rage and purpose. The Norcadians had taken his children, but by God, he would get them back or die trying. The scout ship touched down on the outskirts of the ravaged colony, kicking up clouds of dust and debris. Chris leapt from the hatch, boots hitting the ground running. He sprinted through the ruined streets, past the smoldering husks of once cheerful homes, and the hollow-eyed stares of shell-shocked colonists. He found Jack Hawkins in the makeshift command center, hunched over a flickering holodisplay of the colony. The grizzled ex-commander looked up as Chris burst in, eyes widening in surprise and relief. "Chris, thank God you made it back. We thought—" Jack's voice trailed off, the unspoken fear hanging heavy in the air. Chris gripped his friend's shoulder. "They took them, Jack. The Norcadians. They took my babies and all the other colony kids for some kind of sick experiments." Jack's face hardened, old soldier's instincts kicking in. "Those Xeno bastards, we'll make them pay, Chris. We'll get our kids back." Word spread quickly through the traumatized colony. In the town square beneath the scorched statue of the colony's founder, a crowd of grim-faced parents gathered. Chris stood before them, flanked by Jack, laying out the unthinkable truth of what had befallen their children. Among the assembled parents, Chris saw the same fire that burned in his own heart reflected in their eyes. Mike Donovan, the ace pilot who could fly anything. Dr. Alex Nakamura, the Xeno expert driven by love for his son. Steve Riggs, the mountain of a man who'd once been a feared Marine, now a desperate father. "Those Norcadian bastards think they can steal our children, twist them into weapons for their damned empire," Chris called out, voice ringing across the square. "They think we're weak. They think we'll just roll over and accept this." A chorus of enraged shouts rose from the crowd. Chris raised a fist, his next words a solemn vow. "We'll show them what humans are made of. We'll show them the fury of a parent's love, and we'll bring our kids home, no matter what it takes." As the first stage of their desperate rescue plan, Chris led a strike team to raid a Norcadian military outpost on the fringes of New Eden's system. The human parents fought like demons, fueled by love and rage in equal measure. In the chaos of the battle, they seized a larger Norcadian ship, the Valiant. Standing on the bridge of the captured vessel, Chris felt a spark of hope for the first time since the abductions. Now they had a ship, a heading, and a shared purpose that burned brighter than a supernova. But as he prepared to make the jump to lightspeed, a chilling message cut through the view screen. The sneering face of General Ceres filled the display, his eyes glinting with cruel amusement. "Foolish humans," the alien general hissed. "Did you really think you could defy the might of the Norcadian Empire? Even now, your precious offspring are being molded into our weapons. Their DNA is the clay we shall sculpt into the ultimate soldiers." Chris slammed a fist against the console, teeth bared in a snarl. Ceres just laughed, a sound like razors scraping bone. "Soon your children will belong to us completely. Body and soul, they will serve the Empire, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." The screen went dark, leaving Chris trembling with barely contained fury. Around him, the other parents looked equally stricken and enraged by the general's taunts. "He's wrong," Chris growled, looking at each of his compatriots in turn. "Our kids are strong. They'll hold on until we reach them. And when we do..." He let the promise of retribution hang in the air, unspoken but understood by all. Mike Donovan gripped the Valiant's controls, expression grim and determined. "Then let's quit wasting time and go get our children back." With a surge of power, the Valiant leapt into hyperspace, hurtling across the galaxy towards Norcadia Prime, where the lost children of New Eden awaited rescue. Aboard that distant alien world, Luke, Leia, and the others endured the cruel experiments of their captors, clinging to each other in the distant hope of their parents' love. As the Valiant raced through the stars and the captive children tapped into the first hints of their hidden potential, the stage was set for a cataclysmic confrontation between the power of human will and the ruthless machinations of the Norcadian Empire. The battle for the future was about to begin. The Valiant streaked through the inky void, its hull vibrating with the strain of prolonged faster-than-light travel. Chris paced the bridge, his eyes sharp tight as he watched the unfamiliar star systems blur past on the monitor. "Picking up something on long-range scanners," Mike called out from his station. "Looks like a ship, but the energy signature is unlike anything I've seen before." Chris leaned over Mike's shoulder, studying the readout. "Any life signs?" Mike shook his head. "Nothing, it's just drifting." "Could be a trap," Jack warned, his hand resting on his holstered blaster. Chris considered for a moment, then nodded. "We can't pass up a potential advantage. Take us in, nice and slow." As they approached, the derelict vessel came into view. Its sleek, silvery hull seemed to shimmer and shift, as if it wasn't quite solid. Chris led a boarding party through the airlock, their boots clanging on the alien deck plates. Inside, they found corridors bathed in a soft, pulsing light. Holographic displays flickered to life as they passed, showing incomprehensible symbols and diagrams. "This technology," Dr. Nakamura breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's light years beyond even the Norcadians." In what appeared to be the ship's command center, they discovered a final log entry. A ghostly figure materialized before them, tall, slender, with eyes that glowed like distant stars. "We are the Luminari," the being's voice echoed, tinged with sorrow. "Once enslaved by the Norcadian Empire, we developed a weapon to break their hold over us, but we were betrayed. This ship carries our last hope, the plans for a device that can neutralize Norcadian tech. We pray it finds its way to those who can use it against our oppressors." The hologram flickered out, leaving the humans in stunned silence. Mike was the first to snap out of it. He hurried to a nearby console, fingers flying over the alien controls. "I think I can download the schematics," he muttered. "Give me a few minutes." As Mike worked, Chris's mind raced with possibilities. A way to level the playing field against the Norcadians' superior firepower. A chance to save their children. On Norcadia Prime, Luke bit back a scream as liquid fire coursed through his veins. Dr. Krell loomed over him, her reptilian eyes gleaming with cruel excitement as she injected another dose of the serum. "Fascinating," she hissed. watching Luke's muscles spasm and contort. "Your species' adaptability is truly remarkable." Luke's vision swam, the world around him taking on strange new dimensions. He could feel the heartbeats of the other children in nearby cells, sense the electrical impulses flowing through the facility's walls. As the pain subsided to a dull roar, Luke forced himself to sit up. He met Dr. Krell's gaze, refusing to show weakness. "You won't break us," he growled. Dr. Krell's laugh was like nails on glass. "Oh, my dear boy, breaking you is just the beginning." Later, in the darkness of their shared cell, Luke gathered the other children close. "We have to stay strong," he whispered, his voice hoarse but determined. "Our parents are coming for us. We just need to hold on." Little Sarah, barely more than a toddler, whimpered softly. Luke pulled her onto his lap, ignoring the way his newly enhanced muscles protested the movement. "It hurts," Sarah sniffled. Luke stroked her hair, pushing back his own fear and pain. "I know, sweetheart, but we're tougher than they think, and soon we'll show them just how strong we really are." As the children huddled together, finding comfort in each other's presence, Luke felt a strange energy building within him. He closed his eyes, concentrating, and for just a moment a faint glow emanated from his skin, bathing the cell in soft golden light. The Valiant dropped out of hyperspace near a massive Norcadian military installation. Chris and his team, now armed with the Luminary weapon plans, prepared for their most daring mission yet. "Remember," Chris addressed the assembled parents, his voice low and intense, "our target is Emperor Zolthar. We grab him, we force him to tell us where our kids are being held." Jack nodded grimly. "And if he doesn't cooperate?" Chris's eyes hardened. "Then we make him wish he had." As they donned stolen Norcadian armor, Chris caught a glimpse of his reflection in a polished bulkhead. For a moment, he barely recognized himself. The man staring back was harder, more dangerous than the peaceful colonist he'd once been. But then he thought of Luke and Leia, of all the children suffering at Norcadian hands, and his persistence solidified. He would become whatever he needed to be to bring them home. The infiltration went smoothly at first. Chris, Jack, and Steve moved through the facility's corridors, their stolen uniforms granting them access to restricted areas. But as they neared the command center where Zolthar was scheduled to arrive, alarms began to blare. "We've been made," Steve growled, raising his weapon. A squad of Norcadian elite guards rounded the corner, energy weapons charging with an ominous whine. Chris's hand went to the prototype luminary device at his belt, praying it would work as the schematics promised. As blaster fire filled the air, Chris activated the weapon. A pulse of pure energy erupted from the device, washing over friend and foe alike. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a cascading series of pops and fizzles, every piece of Norcadian tech in the vicinity went dead. Blasters, communication devices, even the facility's automated defense systems, all rendered useless in an instant. Taking advantage of the chaos, Chris and his team fought their way through to the command center. They burst through the doors to find Emperor Zolthar himself, surrounded by his now powerless guards. The Norcadian ruler's eyes widened in shock and fear as he realized he was trapped. Chris leveled his weapon at Zolthar's head, his voice cold as steel. "You're coming with us, and you're going to tell us exactly where you're keeping our children." Zolthar's mouth twisted into a sneer. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, human. Your offspring are no longer the simple creatures you remember. They've become something more." A chill ran down Chris's spine, but he kept his aim steady. "What the hell does that mean?" The Emperor's laugh was devoid of humor. "It means, you fool, that even if you find them, you may not recognize what they've become. The future of warfare is evolving on Norcadia Prime, and your children are at the heart of it." Before Chris could demand more answers, the facility rocked with explosions. The diversionary attacks by the other parents were creating the perfect cover for their escape. "Time to go," Jack urged, already moving to secure their royal prisoner. As they fought their way back to their shuttle, Zolthar's words echoed in Chris's mind. What horrors had been inflicted on their children? And would they still be the same innocent kids they'd left behind on New Eden? With the Emperor in tow, the parents blasted off from the outpost, setting course for Norcadia Prime. Chris stared out at the star-filled expanse, his hands clenched into fists. Whatever his children had endured, whatever they had become, he would not abandon them. The Norcadian Empire was about to learn the true meaning of a parent's love and the terrible vengeance it could unleash. The Valiant streaked through space, its hull vibrating with scarcely controlled energy as it approached Norcadia Prime. Emperor Zolthar sat bound in the cargo hold, his scaled face twisted in a permanent sneer. Chris paced the bridge, every muscle taut with anticipation. "Entering the planet's atmosphere," Mike announced, his hands dancing over the controls. A violent shudder ran through the ship as they plunged through layers of swirling gases. Alarms blared, warning of rising temperatures and structural stress. Suddenly, a crackling transmission cut through the chaos. Dr. Krell's reptilian visage filled the main view screen, her eyes gleaming with malevolent pride. "Greetings, foolish humans," she hissed. "You're too late. Your offspring have undergone significant changes." The screen split, revealing footage from the research facility. Chris's heart clenched as he saw Luke, Leia, and the other children strapped to examination tables, their bodies contorting as strange energies pulsed through them. "What have you done?" Chris snarled, his fists clenching at his sides. Krell's laugh was cold and mirthless. "I've unlocked their true potential. Behold the future of warfare." The feed cut out, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Chris turned to his fellow parents, his eyes blazing with willpower. "We end this now," he growled. "All units prepare for immediate deployment." The Valiant screamed towards the sprawling research complex, its weapons systems primed and ready. As they neared their target, a brilliant flash of light erupted from within the facility. Inside, Leia's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly power. With a thought, she shattered her restraints and those of her fellow captives. Guards rushed in, weapons raised, but Leia merely raised a hand. The soldiers were flung against the walls like ragdolls. "Come on," she shouted to the others. "We have to get out of here." Luke stumbled to his feet, marveling at the newfound strength coursing through his body. Kenji's hands crackled with arcing energy, while Emma's eyes darted about, seeing threats before they materialized. They fought their way through corridors, their nascent abilities wreaking havoc on Norcadian technology. But as they neared the main gates, Dr. Krell's voice rang out over the facility's speakers. "Containment breach in Sector 7. Deploy all available units." A wave of heavily armed troops poured into the atrium, cutting off their escape. The children huddled together, their powers impressive but still raw and unpredictable. Just as the Norcadians opened fire, the ceiling exploded inward. The Valiant hovered above, its landing ramp extending like an invitation to salvation. Chris and the other parents rappelled down, their faces set with grim purpose. "Dad!" Luke cried out, tears streaming down his face. Chris embraced his son, noting with a pang how different he felt. Denser, more solid. "I've got you," he murmured. "We're getting you all out of here." The reunion was cut short as another volley of enemy fire peppered the area. Chris pushed Luke behind him, raising his weapon. What followed was a symphony of destruction. The empowered children unleashed their abilities, working in tandem with their parents' tactical expertise. Luke tore through Norcadian battle armor seamlessly. Kenji manipulated energy fields to deflect incoming fire. Max unleashed concussive blasts that sent entire squads flying. As the dust began to settle, Chris spotted a familiar figure slinking away through the chaos. Emperor Zolthar, somehow freed from his bonds, raised a cruel-looking weapon. "Look out!" Emma's voice rang out clear and certain. Before Chris could react, a shimmering barrier sprang into existence, deflecting Zolthar's shot. The Emperor's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed with hate. "You don't understand what you've done," he spat. "These abominations will be the death of us all." Chris advanced on Zolthar, his voice low and dangerous. "What are you talking about?" The Emperor's laugh was hollow. "Your children are no longer human. They are the vanguard of a new species, one that will inevitably supplant us as the dominant force in the galaxy." He gestured at the devastation around them. This This is nothing compared to what they'll become. The Norcadian Empire will not stand idly by while this threat grows. We will hound you to the edges of the universe if we must, but we will not allow the human ascendancy to... His words were cut off as the facility rocked with another explosion. Chris grabbed Zolthar by the collar, dragging him towards the Valiant. "We're leaving," he growled, "and you're coming with us. I want answers." As they boarded the ship, Chris looked at the gathered children, his own and those of his friends. Their eyes glowed with newfound power, their bodies humming with energy he couldn't begin to comprehend. What had the Norcadians unleashed, and what would it mean for humanity's future among the stars? The Valiant's engines roared to life, lifting them away from the smoldering ruins of the research facility. But as they climbed into the atmosphere, countless Norcadian warships descended from orbit, their weapons charging. Chris strapped himself into the pilot's seat, his face hardened. They had rescued their children, but it was clear their ordeal was a long way to go. The real battle for survival was only just beginning. The Valiant's engines strained as Chris pushed them to their limits, weaving through the gauntlet of Norcadian warships. Energy beams lanced past the hull, each near miss, sending vibrations through the deck plates. "We can't outrun them forever," Jack shouted from the weapons console. Chris's eyes darted across the navigation panel, searching for an escape route. Suddenly, an unfamiliar icon caught his attention, a green hexagon pulsing with an otherworldly energy. "What the hell is that?" he muttered, tapping the screen. A cascade of alien symbols flooded the display, resolving into recognizable text. "Prototype warp drive detected. Caution, uncharted routes possible." Chris's heart raced. This could be their one shot at survival. "Everyone, secure yourselves," he bellowed. "We're about to try something insane." With a silent prayer, Chris activated the experimental drive. Reality itself seemed to twist and warp around the ship. Stars blurred into streaks of light, then vanished entirely as the Valiant plunged into a swirling vortex of impossible colors. For what felt like an eternity, the ship hurtled through the cosmic maelstrom. Then, with a bone-jarring lurch, they emerged into normal space. "Status report," Chris called out, fighting a wave of nausea. We're alive," Mike responded, his voice shaky. "But where are we?" The view screen flickered to life, revealing a breathtaking sight. The Valiant hung suspended before a vast nebula, its swirling clouds of cosmic dust and newborn stars, painting the void in hues of purple and gold. "The Nirvana Nebula," Chris breathed. "It's supposed to be impossible to reach." A proximity alarm blared, cutting through the moment of wonder. Chris's hands flew over the controls, bringing the ship about to face the new threat. What he saw defied comprehension. An enormous ring hung in space, dwarfing the Valiant. Its curved surface stretched beyond the limits of vision, studded with glittering lights and geometric patterns that hinted at an alien intelligence far beyond human understanding. "By the stars," Sarah whispered, "what is that thing?" Before anyone could respond, a new voice crackled over the ship's speakers, a lilting, melodious tone that carried an unmistakable edge of steel. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered Corsari space. State your intentions or be destroyed." Chris exchanged a wary glance with Jack before keying the comm. "This is the Valiant. We're refugees from New Eden, seeking sanctuary from the Norcadian Empire." A tense silence followed. Then a shimmering portal materialized in the ringworld's surface. The voice spoke again, this time with a hint of curiosity. "You may approach, Valiant, but be warned, any hostile action will be met with immediate and overwhelming force." As Chris guided the ship towards the mysterious construct, the empowered children gathered at the viewports. Luke pressed a hand against the transparent metal, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "Dad," he said softly, "I can feel something calling to us." Chris nodded grimly. Whatever awaited them within that impossible structure, he knew their lives would never be the same. The Valiant glided into the ringworld's embrace, carrying its crew of accidental revolutionaries into an uncertain future. The Valiant's arrival in Corsari space marked the beginning of a new chapter for Chris and his fellow refugees, Over the following months, they found an uneasy sanctuary within the vast ring world, all too aware that their respite was temporary. Chris stood before a holo display, studying the familiar contours of Archaeopolis. "This is it," he said, his voice low. "The heart of the Norcadian Empire." Jack nodded grimly. "And our best shot at stopping the purge virus." A lithe figure materialized from the shadows. "You'll never breach their defenses without help," Zora said, her multifaceted eyes glinting. The Corsari operative's past was shrouded in mystery, but her skills were undeniable. "What did you have in mind?" Chris asked. Zora's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile. "How do you feel about some new armor?" Hours later, Chris found himself encased in the sleek obsidian shell of a Deathbringer exosuit. The Norcadian battle armor felt alien, yet unnervingly familiar. As systems initialized, a heads-up display flickered to life, feeding him a constant stream of tactical data. "Now for the fun part," Jack's voice crackled through the comm link. "Time to steal ourselves a warship." The assault on the Norcadian shipyard was a symphony of precision and violence. Chris marveled at the raw power coursing through the Deathbringer suit as he tore through security barriers with minimal resistance. Alarms blared, but the defenders were caught flat-footed by the speed and ferocity of the attack. "There!" Zora called out, gesturing towards a gleaming vessel of angular design. "Fury-class destroyer, perfect for our needs." They fought their way to the ship, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. As the engines roared to life, Chris allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. They were bringing the fight to Zolthar's doorstep. The journey to Archaeopolis passed in tense silence. Chris's thoughts drifted to the children, to Luke and Leia, their bodies and minds transformed by Norcadian experiments. He pushed the worry aside, focusing on the mission ahead. Infiltrating the capital proved almost too easy. Their stolen Deathbringer armor granted them access to restricted areas, and soon they found themselves amid the ranks of Zolthar's elite purifier guard. Deep within the Citadel's bowels, they discovered the horrifying truth. Holoscreens displayed footage from the Hydri system, a human colony world. Chris watched in mute horror as colonists disintegrated into ash, their very molecules unraveling. The purge virus was no longer theoretical. It was all too real. "This changes everything," Chris murmured, his fists clenched within the Deathbringer gauntlets. "If Zolthar deploys this on a galactic scale..." An alert chimed through their comm links. Zora's voice was tense. "We have a problem. Ceres has launched an assault on the Corsari ringworld. They're going for our families." Chris's blood ran cold. He thought of Sarah, of the children, facing the full might of the Norcadian war machine. But they couldn't abandon their mission now, not when they were so close to the source of the purge virus. "We have to trust them," Chris said, though the words tasted like ash in his mouth. "We finish this here, now." They pushed deeper into the Citadel, their cover intact but growing more precarious by the moment. Chris's heart pounded as they neared the command bunker. One way or another, humanity's fate would be decided here. The vast chamber was a hive of activity. Norcadian technicians swarmed around banks of computers, their scaled fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. And there, at the center of it all, stood Emperor Zolthar himself. Chris watched as the Norcadian ruler activated a series of protocols, his reptilian features set in unbreakable spirit. The meaning was clear. The purge virus was about to be unleashed. "Now!" Chris roared, shedding his Deathbringer disguise. The element of surprise gave them a precious few seconds of chaos. Jack launched himself at the virus delivery systems, his augmented strength ripping through metal and circuitry. Chris found himself locked in combat with waves of purifier guards, their energy weapons leaving scorch marks on his armor. Through the melee, he caught glimpses of Zora. The Corsari operative moved with deadly grace, cutting a path straight towards Emperor Zolthar. As she neared her target, Zora's features seemed to shimmer and change. The Emperor's eyes widened in shock. "Laressa," he hissed, "it cannot be." Zora, or Laressa, removed her helm entirely, revealing features that mirrored Zolthar's own. "Hello, brother," she snarled. "I've come to collect an old debt." Their duel was ferocious, decades of pent-up rage fueling Larissa's assault. Chris couldn't spare it more than a glance, focused on holding back the tide of purifiers. Just as victory seemed within reach, a new alarm blared through the Citadel. Dr. Krell's face appeared on every screen, her eyes gleaming with malevolent triumph. "You're too late," she gloated. "Archaeopolis will serve as the perfect testing ground for our masterpiece." Horror dawned as Chris realized the implications. The Purge virus was already spreading through the capital, targeting any trace of human DNA. And if it worked as designed, it would mean a death sentence not just for him and his team, but for the evolved children as well. As the Citadel descended into pandemonium, Chris knew their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. They had to find a way to neutralize the virus and escape Archaeopolis before it was too late, for themselves and for the future of humanity. As the Purge virus ravaged Archaeopolis, an otherworldly energy pulsed through the evolved children. Luke's eyes snapped open, glowing with an inner fire. His body shimmered, wounds knitting shut in seconds. "Something's happening," he gasped, flexing fingers that crackled with raw power. Leia stumbled, overwhelmed by newfound awareness. The air around her rippled as reality itself bent to her will. "I can see everything," she whispered. Max raised his hands, marveling as cosmic energy danced between his palms. With a thought, he unleashed a blast that vaporized an entire section of the Citadel wall. Chris stared in awe at the transformation. "Kids, we need to move." Kenji nodded, extending his arms. A shimmering energy field expanded outward, enveloping the entire team. Purge virus particles disintegrated against the barrier. Mia blurred into motion, her form barely visible as she zipped through collapsing corridors. "This way!" she called, voice echoing from multiple locations simultaneously. The group raced through the disintegrating Citadel, following Mia's guidance. Chris's heart pounded as he witnessed the incredible feats of the children. Luke effortlessly tossed aside massive chunks of debris. Leia's gestures opened spatial rifts, providing shortcuts through impassable areas. As they neared the exit, a massive section of the ceiling came crashing down. Chris braced for impact, but it never came. He looked up to see Leia, eyes blazing with cosmic fire, holding the debris aloft with her mind. "Go!" she commanded, voice resonating with newfound authority. They sprinted into the open air of Archaeopolis. The city was chaos incarnate, buildings crumbling, streets buckling, and citizens fleeing in terror. "We can't let the virus spread beyond the capital," Jack shouted over the din. Leia nodded grimly. "I can contain it, but we need to get clear first." Mia's voice crackled over their comms. "I've secured transport, 100 meters north." Chris marveled at the sight of his daughter, already waiting by a sleek Norcadian shuttle. How had she moved so fast? As they piled into the craft, Leia turned to face the dying city. She raised her arms, and the fabric of reality itself seemed to warp and twist. A shimmering dome of energy materialized over Archaeopolis, sealing it off from the rest of the planet. "Now," Leia said, her voice strained with effort, "to end this." The air vibrated with power as Leia manipulated cosmic forces beyond human comprehension. Archaeopolis began to fold in on itself, collapsing into a singularity that consumed virus, city, and all. As the shuttle rocketed away from the imploding capital, alarms blared across its sensors. A massive Corsari fleet had dropped out of hyperspace, led by Thara's distinctive flagship. "The counterattack has begun," Zora, or rather Larissa, announced grimly. Chris watched the tactical display in amazement as Corsari forces struck Norcadian strongholds across the sector. But his attention was drawn to an urgent transmission from the Corsari ringworld. Sarah's face appeared on the screen, her expression a mix of relief and fear. "Chris, thank the stars you're alive, but we have a problem. General Ceres is amassing an armada for a final assault on the ringworld." Chris's blood ran cold. He looked at the children, their bodies still humming with newfound power. Then it's time to end this war once and for all. The shuttle accelerated, pushing its engines to the limit as it raced toward the ultimate confrontation. Behind them, the last vestiges of Archaeopolis vanished into the cosmic void, taking the purge virus with it. Ahead lay an uncertain future, and a battle that would reshape the galaxy forever. The shuttle hurtled through space, its occupants still reeling from the destruction of Archaeopolis. Chris watched the children with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Their newfound powers crackled with terrifying energy, transforming the very air around them. As they approached the Corsari ringworld, the true scale of the conflict became apparent. General Ceres' armada loomed menacingly, a sea of Norcadian warships poised to strike. On the other side, the hastily assembled Corsari defense fleet looked woefully outmatched. Luke's eyes blazed with cosmic fire. "We can end this," he said, his voice resonating with newfound authority. "All of it." Before Chris could respond, reality itself seemed to bend around them. In a heartbeat, they materialized on the ringworld's surface, surrounded by the chaos of evacuation efforts. Sarah rushed forward, embracing Chris tightly. "You made it," she whispered, her voice thick with relief. Their reunion was cut short as the sky erupted in flame. Norcadian energy weapons lanced down, carving molten furrows across the ringworld's surface. Screams of terror filled the air as refugees scrambled for shelter. Leia stepped forward, her small frame dwarfed by the devastation around her. She raised her hands and a shimmering barrier materialized above them, deflecting the barrage with ease. "Impossible," Larissa breathed, her reptilian features contorted in shock. Max grinned, cosmic energy dancing between his fingers. "You ain't seen nothing yet." The children moved as one, their powers intertwining in ways that defied comprehension. Kenji's energy fields expanded outward, enveloping friendly ships in protective bubbles. Mia blurred into motion, evacuating entire sections of the ringworld in the blink of an eye. High above, General Ceres watched in mounting horror as his carefully laid plans crumbled. Entire squadrons of Norcadian fighters simply winked out of existence, trapped in perpetual singularities of Kenji's creation. Luke strode forward, his body wreathed in crackling energy. With a gesture, he unmade a Norcadian dreadnought, its hull disintegrating into cosmic dust. The battle for the ringworld was over almost before it began. As the last Norcadian ship fled or surrendered, a stunned silence fell over the assembled forces. Chris looked at his children, no, these transcendent beings that had once been his children, and realized that everything had changed. What are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Leia turned to him, her eyes filled with the wisdom of ages. "We are the next step," she said simply. "The bridge between what humanity was and what it can become." In the cycles that followed, the galaxy transformed. The children's awakening triggered a cascade of evolution across human colonies. New subspecies emerged, each more extraordinary than the last. The old structures of power crumbled as the Terran ascendancy rose from the ashes of conflict. Chris and Sarah watched it all unfold from Ascendancy Prime, the former Corsari ringworld, now a thriving nexus of civilization. Luke and Leia stood at its heart, guiding countless beings along the path of transcendence. Yet even as a new era of enlightenment dawned, shadows gathered on the fringes of known space. Dr. Krell, consumed by bitterness and rage, labored in secret to forge a weapon that would restore Norcadian supremacy. In the depths of her hidden laboratory, Krell gazed upon her creation with mad pride. The Neo-Norcadian towered over her, a fusion of alien genetics and cutting-edge cybernetics. Its eyes glowed with murderous intelligence as it flexed limbs capable of rending starships. "Soon," Krell hissed, her scales gleaming in the harsh light. "Soon we will purge the galaxy of these abominations and reclaim our rightful place." The Neo-Norcadian inclined its head in silent acknowledgement. As Krell turned back to her console, the creature's gaze lingered on the display showing the glittering expanse of Ascendancy space. War was coming, a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The shimmering expanse of Ascendancy space faded from view as the Rogers family's shuttle emerged from hyperspace above New Eden. Chris gazed out the viewport at the lush green world below, a bittersweet ache in his chest. After years of conflict and sacrifice, they were finally returning home. As they descended through the atmosphere, the true scope of New Eden's transformation became apparent. Where once there had been struggling outposts, now sprawling cities gleamed in the sunlight. Massive terraforming engines hummed in the distance, steadily reclaiming land from the planet's harsh wilderness. The shuttle touched down in the heart of New Providence, the colony's capital. A sea of faces greeted them, humans who had endured decades of Norcadian oppression, now free at last. Chris felt a swell of pride as he watched Luke and Leia step onto New Eden's soil, their mere presence seeming to make the air crackle with potential. "The Liberators have returned!" a voice cried out, and the crowd erupted in cheers. For a moment, it seemed like a fairy tale ending, but as days passed, the harsh realities of their new existence became impossible to ignore. Chris found Luke in what remained of the colony's industrial sector, surrounded by twisted metal and shattered machinery. His son's face was a mask of anguish. "I was just trying to help," Luke said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could speed up the rebuilding, but—" He gestured helplessly at the destruction around him. Before Chris could respond, the ground beneath them lurched. A chasm opened in the earth, reality itself warping and buckling. At its center stood Leia, eyes wide with panic. "I can't control it," she cried out. "I was thinking about home, about how things used to be, and suddenly—" Sarah's voice crackled over the emergency comms. "We've got reports of anomalies all across the colony, spatial distortions, time dilation. Kenji's energy signature is off the charts. We're looking at a potential extinction-level event if this keeps up." Chris met Sarah's eyes across the fractured landscape, a silent understanding passing between them. They had no choice. For the safety of New Eden, for the entire galaxy, they had to leave. The next weeks passed in a blur of frantic activity. Under Sarah's guidance, they commandeered an abandoned Corsari mobile fortress, a behemoth of a station designed to traverse the very fabric of space-time. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock, retrofitting the ancient technology to serve as a sanctuary for the ascended children and their family. As the newly christened Zion Station neared completion, alarms blared across New Providence. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a familiar face twisted with hatred and ambition. "Zoran!" Larissa hissed, her reptilian features contorting in disgust. The renegade Corsari warlord sneered at them from the projection. "Did you think your little crusade would usher in an era of peace? Fools! True power belongs to those with the will to seize it." Images flashed across the screen. Ascendancy, prime in flames, Zoran's forces cutting a bloody swath through those who resisted his coup. "He's after the children," Chris realized with mounting horror. "He wants to use their power for himself." As if in response to his words, the sky above New Providence erupted in fire. Zoran's vanguard had arrived, a swarm of sleek fighters raining death upon the colony. "Mia," Sarah barked, "get the non-combatants to the safe zones. Luke, Max, you're our front line. Everyone else to your stations. We launch as soon as Zion is space-worthy." The battle that followed was chaos incarnate. Mia blurred across the battlefield, entire families vanishing in her wake as she whisked them to safety. Luke and Max stood as titans against the onslaught, cosmic energies ravaging Zoran's forces. Through it all, Chris fought alongside the colonists he had sworn to protect, acutely aware that this might be the last time he set foot on New Eden soil. As Zion Station's engines roared to life, a piercing scream cut through the din of battle. Emma stumbled from the station's entrance, her eyes glowing with terrible knowledge. "It's Krell," she gasped. "She's alive. She's activated some kind of failsafe. A cosmic singularity. She's bringing back Neo-Norcadia." The implications hit Chris like a physical blow. Everything they had fought for, every sacrifice made, it could all be undone in an instant. Kenji stepped forward, persistence etched in every line of his face. "We can stop it," he said, reaching for Emma's hand. "But the price—" Chris watched in helpless anguish as understanding dawned in Emma's eyes. She nodded once, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, Dad," Kenji said, his voice thick with emotion. "We love you. Take care of the others." Before anyone could react, Kenji and Emma vanished in a burst of light. The fabric of reality itself seemed to shudder. And then, stillness. Zion Station's sensors registered the collapse of the artificial singularity, Krell's machinations crumbling to cosmic dust. But the victory felt hollow as Chris gazed at the empty space where two of his children had stood moments before. As Zion's engines ignited, propelling them into the void between realities, Chris looked out at the family that remained. Luke and Leia, their forms shimmering with almost unchecked power. Max, his eyes haunted by the infinite possibilities he could perceive. Mia, still vibrating with latent energy. They were no longer simply human, no longer bound by the laws that governed mortal existence. Their crusade had transformed them into something new, something unfathomable. As Zion Station vanished into the cosmic tapestry, Chris couldn't shake the feeling that this was not an end, but a beginning. A first step on a journey that would reshape the very foundations of reality itself. The cosmic tapestry shuddered as Zion Station materialized in an uncharted sector of spacetime. Chris stumbled, his hand grasping for purchase on a nearby console. The air felt heavy, thick with an oppressive silence that spoke volumes about what they had lost. Sarah's eyes were red-rimmed as she gazed at the empty spaces where Kenji and Emma should have been. "We need to run diagnostics," she said, her voice cracking. "Make sure the station's systems are stable after the jump." Before Chris could respond, a keening wail echoed through the corridors. He sprinted towards the source, heart pounding. He found Leia curled into a fetal position, her body wreathed in crackling energy that warped the very fabric of reality around her. "I can feel them," she sobbed. "Kenji and Emma, they're everywhere and nowhere. It hurts, Dad. It hurts so much." Luke knelt beside his sister, reaching out to comfort her. "Leia, I'm here. We're all—" His words cut off as his hand made contact with Leia's shoulder. A blinding flash erupted, and suddenly a gaping tear in space-time yawned before them. Swirling cosmic energies howled through the breach, threatening to tear Zion apart. "No!" Luke shouted, his face contorted with guilt and panic. He strained against the rift, raw power pouring from his form as he fought to seal it. Alarms blared throughout the station. Chris's comm crackled to life, Mia's frantic voice cutting through the chaos. "Dad, the station's quantum drive is overloading. I'm trying to stabilize our course, but—" Her words dissolved into static as Zion lurched violently. Through the viewports, Chris watched in horror as reality itself seemed to fracture and splinter. They were careening through a kaleidoscopic maelstrom of potential timelines and alternate dimensions. "Max!" Sarah called out. "Can you see a way out of this?" Their eldest son stood rigid, his eyes wide and unfocused. "I see everything," he whispered. "Every possibility, every outcome. It's too much. Too much." Cosmic energy erupted from Max's form, lancing outward in uncontrolled bursts. The station's hull groaned as the quantum shielding buckled under the assault. "Life support failing," an automated voice announced dispassionately. "Hull breach imminent." Sarah's face was ashen as she met Chris's gaze. "We have no choice," she said, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of alarms. "We have to abandon Zion." Chris nodded grimly, his heart heavy. "Kids," he shouted, "to the escape pod now!" As they raced through the disintegrating corridors, Sarah pulled a small crystalline device from her pocket. "The modified Corsari gateway," she explained. "It's our only chance." They piled into the cramped escape pod, the station crumbling around them. Sarah's fingers flew over the crystal's faceted surface, inputting coordinates with desperate haste. "Hold on," she cried as she activated the device. Reality twisted and stretched. For an eternal moment, they existed everywhere and nowhere at once. Then, with a bone-jarring impact, the pod splashed down in an endless expanse of alien ocean. As the hatch hissed open, Chris felt different. The cosmic energy that had thrummed through his veins since their ascension was gone. He was mortal once more. "Our powers," Mia whispered, staring at her hands. "They're suppressed." Chris gazed out at the alien seascape, stretching as far as the eye could see. They were stranded, powerless, on an uncharted waterworld. Yet as he watched his family emerge from the pod, battered but alive, he felt a flicker of hope. "We're together," he said, his voice firm. "That's what matters. Now let's figure out how to survive in this new world. As they began to salvage what they could from the escape pod, Chris couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of an entirely new chapter in their cosmic odyssey.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.